Good morning. It's Tuesday, September 20th, and I welcome all of you here this morning. I'm Bob Stoll, I'm moderator and also vice chair of the Chamber of Commerce. Tom Taylor in front here, raise your hand, Tom, will be our timekeeper, and we've already talked about how that timekeeping will work. Tom is a member of the board and also chair of the Public Policy Committee. We'd like to thank the City of Burnsville for the use of the chambers and also for recording and streaming this forum this morning. We'd also like to thank Xcel Energy, who is our host this morning. The Burnsville Chamber of Commerce works closely with all of our appointed elected officials to ensure a bright future for our community. This is why we are here this morning, to get to know the candidates and to introduce them to the community so that our voters can make an informed choice on November 8th. Thank you to the candidates for being here this morning. People are very interested to hear your comments. Because we want to cover a lot of ground this morning, we're going to ask candidates to keep their answers brief and really laser focused on the issue at hand.
Can we turn the birds off? We always got the birds on here.
Okay, so what we're going to do for this first part is we're going to go through a series of questions after the introduction, and the candidates will get a minute and a half to answer each of the questions. And so to start us off this morning, and we'll just do our questions in rotational order, and each question we'll move it along. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your experience, and what motivated you to run for office.
Thank you. Thank you to the Chamber for putting together this forum. This is a great way to share information and also to get to know us a little bit. I'm Senator Jim Carlson. I'm completing my second term in the Minnesota Senate, and I actually was, I grew up in Eagan. I've been here my whole life, and I'm an engineer. I retired from 3M. And I've been 30 years in business. I've had small, medium, and large-size business experience. And when I retired, I was a manufacturing manager for a group called Acoustic Control Systems. I wanted to give back to my community. My community has been very good to me. The state has been very good to me, and I wanted to give back, and that's what I did. I ran for office, and my priorities were education, transportation, and the care of the vulnerable among us, because we all have some experience with vulnerable individuals. The Carlson family's been in Eagan for about 100 years, so we know the area. I know most of the streets. I know my way around, and I've been really interested in making sure that we get good representation at the Capitol. I'm chair of the State Department's Veterans Finance. I'm on the State Department's committee, vice chair. I'm on Transportation, Health and Human Services, Finance, Commerce, and Elections. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Victor Lake, and I'm running for State Senate. I want to thank the Chamber for putting this on. I really appreciate the opportunity to get our message out there, and also the City of Burnsville. I came to this great country as an immigrant about 20 years ago, 1997. Came from the former Soviet Union. Came for freedom and opportunity. I love this country and I love this state dearly. I've been here since we came, and I'm a small business owner now. I own a flooring company and I have my builder's license. I live in Burnsville right here with my wife, and we have a 2-year-old. I'm running because the American dream that my family came here for is disappearing in our very district, and that's a problem. That's sad, and it is wrong. The taxes, record high taxes that have been enacted by my opponent and his party are crippling family budgets. Healthcare mess that Mincher has created is hurting our families. It personally affected my family, and this is precisely why I'm running, to represent every person and all people of this great city of Burnsville and the great city of Eagan. Thank you.
I'm Dan Hall.
Senator to the area here, and thank you for the opportunity. I've been married to my wife Valerie for 42 years. She is still the love of my life. We have 8 children, 12 grandchildren. I've been a resident of Burnsville since 1991. My first job was when I was 14, and I worked at the VA hospital feeding soldiers as they returned from Vietnam. I think it's because of that my professional career has been mostly in relating and caring for people. I'm a school teacher, principal, minister, coach, volunteer police and fire chaplain. I served at the 35W bridge collapse. I've been a coordinator of a food shelf for 10 years, founder of a nonprofit. I went to Roosevelt and Augsburg College. I attend River Valley Church and Cedar Valley Church in Bloomington. My motivations for running are pretty simple: my children and my grandchildren. I believe our future is to encourage strong families and broad freedoms. I was taught by my parents 4 values to live by: work hard, play fair, do the right thing, and expect the best in life. And I try to do that and share that wherever I go.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. My name is Phil Sterner, and I'm honored to be here today. Graduating from Apple Valley High School, I didn't stray too far from my roots. After attending the University of St. Thomas, I opened my own small business, practicing insurance for families, organizations, and businesses. I've dedicated my life to ensuring clients the very best possible insurance protection and I've been active in this incredible community, seeking a friendly climate for businesses to grow. I served as a state representative from 2009 to 2011 in House District 37B. In the legislature, I was known for working across party lines to fight for smart opportunities to invest in Minnesota. Some of my central accomplishments including bringing local jobs to Apple Valley through an expansion of the Minnesota Zoo, reducing bureaucratic red tape by passing the complete street legislation, and also helping grow local businesses by saving taxpayers by adopting a 5% asphalt standard for shingles in the Minnesota's roadways. I also created and authored a bill that protected consumers from unethical roofing contractors that is being used in 14 states today. I was also a co-author on the ban on BPA and baby bottles and fought to end the backlog for pay for our Minnesota's veterans. I'm honored to seek your vote, and I look forward to this conversation today.
Hello, my name is Sandra Mason, and it's my honor to represent House District 51A, which is most of Eagan west of 35E and all of northern Burnsville. This past session, I served on the Transportation Committee, the Health and Human Services Reform Committee, as well as Aging and Long-Term Care. I have lived in this community for a very long time, and I raised my 3 children here, and they all graduated from Burnsville High School. My first foray into local politics is just going over to the Eagan City Hall to ask for a field to be cleared so my kids and the neighborhood kids had a safe place to play. Eventually, I got on the Eagan Parks and Recreation Commission. I served on the Eagan City Council for 8 years, and I also was active in the school district, including 8 years on the the Burnsville-Eagan Savage Community and Education Advisory Committee. And I really have a very high regard for that philosophy. I've also been on the Communication Committee for the school district and various other volunteer activities. It seems like there's always something to be done in our community, and I'm looking forward to the discussion today to talk about things that will move our district and Minnesota forward. And I'm excited about the volunteer opportunity to continue serving Burnsville and Eagan.
Brad Gerten, I'm running for House District 51A. Been a Burnsville resident most of my life. I went to Metcalf Junior High, graduated from Burnsville High School. I have a 22-year military history. I retired 2 years ago after 22 years of active duty and National Guard time. I served in Bosnia, Iraq, and Afghanistan. I'm currently a probation officer in Hennepin County. I serve on the Burnsville Economic Development Commission. I officiate hockey at the high school and youth levels, as well as umpire baseball and softball. I've got a master's degree in criminal justice leadership, bachelor's in police science, and an associate's in law enforcement. My concerns are for what's going on here south of the river. We need to have representation in St. Paul that's going to keep the interests of Burnsville and Egan in mind. We need to keep taxes lower. We need to be spending money responsibly. We need to keep education strong and try to make it stronger. We need to have local control of education. Let the parents have a stronger voice by having local control at the school board level. Mincher's been a disaster. It needs to be reformed. No, it needs to be thrown out. It needs to be replaced. We have a lot of tasks to accomplish. We need to do it with some conservative representation. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Drew Christensen. I was born in Burnsville. I live in Savage, grew up in Savage. I've lived here my entire life, and this community has given a lot to me. I graduated from Prior Lake High School in the University of Minnesota, and then I ran for office in 2014 for the State House because I was upset about wasteful spending in St. Paul, a legislature that spent more money on a $90 million on a luxury office building for politicians than they spent on roads and bridges that biennium. And, you know, I wanted to make sure we would take care of our schools, that every student would have a great teacher in their classroom. And I've been excited and happy to fight for that at the Capitol the last 2 years.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jared Christensen. I come from a hardworking family where my parents had lost their jobs when I was 15 years old, and unfortunately, they had to file a bankruptcy and a foreclosure, and I also grew up in an environment where the water pipes would freeze in the middle of winter. I understand how hardworking Minnesotans can take on issues. I started working when I was 15 and a half to help alleviate the financial strain on my parents, so I know the value of hard work and responsibility. Everything that I have, including the car that I drive and my college education, I own because I worked hard and paid for it. My motivation for running for Burnsville and Savage is that I believe in better representation. I don't agree with the votes that my opponent has taken, which is along mostly party lines. I'd like to be that state legislator that would listen to people regardless of political party and regardless of the culture that you come from. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Roz Peterson, and I've had the honor of serving House District 56B in Burnsville and Lakeville for the last 2 years. Currently, I've served as Vice Chair on the Health and Human Services Committee, and I also serve on both Education Committees, Finance and Policy. Prior to that, I served as the School Board Chair of the Lakeville Area Schools and was on the school board for 8 years. I've come from the drugstore business. I had 4 drugstores for 20 years, and now I've been in commercial real estate actually for 30. I've been an active community member of this area for also that same period of time as a member at Hosanna Church, and actively involved in different volunteer activities from Hope for Tomorrow mentoring to Girl Scout leader, PTO vice president, things of that nature. And it's really been a fun way for me to give back to the community. Some of my past awards are Spirit of Caring Award from 360 Communities, Business Person of the Year with Lakeville Chamber, and also Exceptional Businesswoman honoree. Some of my key legislation was restoring legislative oversight to commissioners' pay raises and stillborn credit. And I really look forward to serving you for the following 2 years. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Port, and I'm running for state representative in 56B, which covers parts of Burnsville and Lakeville. My husband Steve and I own our own small business right here in Burnsville, and as small business owners, We know how to make the difficult decisions about cutting spending and making smart investments for the future. I came to run for office after serving on the ECFE Advisory Council in Lakeville and being an active volunteer for marriage equality across Minnesota. Through those activities, I've heard from thousands of neighbors across our district about what's important to them and how many common values we really have. High quality education, vibrant communities where small businesses and everyday people can thrive, and transportation policies that build and invest in our future. I believe that if we work together, we can achieve these common goals that strengthen our families and our communities. My campaign is focused on three main principles: a vibrant economy, prioritizing our students, and safe and healthy communities. I believe that if we're investing in small businesses and creating opportunities for them to grow, that we can help families across Minnesota achieve prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you. My compliments to each and every one of you for helping us stay right on track with such a large group. Very difficult, so I applaud you for doing that this morning. Let's move into question number 2. Victor, we'll start out with you. What are the top 2 legislative issues you are concerned about, and what would be your specific action plans to alleviate them? And again, it's 1.5 minutes.
My top concerns or issues are the 2 top concerns and issues of the people of my district. And those are the 2 issues that they've been affected the most by and they've been hurt by. And they are healthcare. MNsure unarguably has been a disaster for our market and for our families. Governor Dayton himself said it was his biggest disappointment. It is wrong to spend over $300 million on a website that still doesn't work the way it should, and to give out bonuses to people who were in charge of something like that. So the pain is real in my district. Healthcare is a big problem as far as MNsure is concerned, and that's the reason I'm running. Another concern is taxes. And taxes are important because it has everything to do with jobs. It has everything to do with our economy, how well our economy is performing. And let me just give you a couple of statistics. We have the 3rd highest income tax rate for the top bracket, 2nd highest for the lowest. That's not competitive. That's not competitive for our state, for our economy, and globally. We have to compete globally, not only nationally. We have a global economy. So those are the issues that are hurting my district, my people, and that's why I'm running. I definitely believe we are on the wrong track, and I'm running to put us back on the right track on those issues.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good job, Victor. That's so true. For me, it's as I've gone door to door to thousands of homes, I keep hearing education and safety. Education, we want to be safe in our community, and we want to give back to the next generation, because really that's what it's about. Let me make it clear, we have fabulous teachers in our schools, but our school system and the mandates that we put on them are hindering them to do their job. I don't know if people understand or know, but 50% of the kids in Minneapolis do not graduate on time. 50%. So I will work to free up teachers and give them flexibility to do and teach the important things. And with safety, we have a mental health crisis. And we need to, and our families are feeling the pressures of life. We need to ease that up. Our district is privileged to have the finest police force in Minnesota. And I would pledge to give them my support and the tools they need to do their job in this ever-changing and challenging world. But let me add, as Victor said, healthcare costs are squeezing us as families. We must lower the healthcare costs. And let me not forget jobs and economy. They are the backbone of our society.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. The top 2 issues I hear at the doors are property taxes and college affordability and debt. I firmly believe one of the best ways to boost the opportunity for Minnesotans is a reduction in property taxes. How we get there is by fully funding K through 12 education on a state level. So many localities are using property tax referendums to get dollars for school programs. And if we fully fund our schools on a state level, many of these referendums will go away. We'll also reduce the amount our school districts are in debt, and they have to do techniques that they do to selling bonds to be able to get our students a great education. When it comes to college affordability and debt, so many of our families are being negatively impacted by this. Graduates are buying homes at a much lower rate than in past generations. Parents are often carrying these loans. We can do a few things. We can allow students, parents, and even grandparents to be able to refinance college loans the same way you can a home loan. We can create scholarships in sectors that we know will grow our economy and have a huge demand, such as healthcare, technology, and science. Freezing public school college tuition is also very important. This is a place where many students who can't afford four-year colleges get their start, and we have seen that it hurts their ability for these students to be able to get ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. My two priorities, and there are many, it's really tough to pick two, would be transportation. Transportation impacts every aspect of our life, whether you're going to work, whether you're going to school, to the doctors, etc. And our system is falling behind. So to me, it's critical that and this also impacts the economy because businesses need to get their products from one part of the state to the other and beyond. So that, and I will tell you, this year was really frustrating that we didn't get a comprehensive transportation out. The funding, and you need people that are willing to take the hard vote to get a stable funding for the transportation. And that's what I think is also very critical, is to have people that are willing to take the votes to get the job done. The other thing, as my colleague over here mentioned, is education. And at both ends, we need to be doing more for the early learners. I have a 5-year-old granddaughter that just started kindergarten. Now, both of her parents work. She's been in daycare for a number of years, and she's now, I'm biased, I know. She's an incredibly smart little girl, but I am just constantly amazed at all that she's been able to achieve, and my hope is that we can do something to enable all children in our state to be able to have that opportunity.
Thank you.
I as well have a top priority of transportation. We need more roads and bridges. We need to continue to maintain and get ahead of maintaining roads and bridges, the existing infrastructure we have. We need to spend money smartly when it comes to transportation. We cannot be dropping $2 billion on boondoggles and other projects that will then cost state taxpayers tens of millions of dollars a year going forward. That's going to benefit very few. Need to concentrate the transportation spending on what's going to benefit the most. And light rail is not that option. We need to concentrate on more lanes. Also, education. I mentioned in my opening statement that local control is very important. Also, parental choice is key to having a strong education system. If schools know that they're going to have the students there, they might not feel that competition that like a business would. They know that students can be pulled out and put in a charter school, put in a private school. They might not be as lax in some cases. We want public schools to work just as hard as any other school out there to earn those students coming there. It shouldn't be just because they live in that area, they're going to be going to that school and then the money follows them to that school district. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. One of my top priorities is investing in transportation, but that's the next question, so I'll skip it for now. You know, education is the main reason I ran for office. It's what's most important to me, making sure we take care of our schools. That's why I pushed for and secured the largest increase in education funding in over a decade in Minnesota. I think it's important that we take care of our schools, and I'm incredibly proud of what we did these last 2 years for education. There's a lot more work to do to make sure that every classroom has a great teacher in front of it, and that every kid, regardless of their zip code, is getting a great education. It's also incredibly important that we provide some tax relief for middle-class Minnesota families. I supported a tax relief for students, for college students, that would help them receive a tax deduction, a credit for their student loan payments to help make college more affordable. I think that's incredibly important. Tax cuts for teachers, for working families with children in childcare. That unfortunately were vetoed by the governor. But these things are incredibly important, and I'll be pushing for them in the legislature.
Thank you.
My top two issues are education and transportation. We must find a way to lower higher education costs, as well as focus on the other end of expanding universal pre-K. Education is meant to build a successful pathway for people, regardless of income, culture, or other barriers that may prevent them from getting a quality education. We must also rebuild structurally deficient roads and bridges and expand public transit. To accomplish these two items, we must fund them adequately and sustainably. And we also must have discussions with local leaders, local small business owners, and constituents. And these can't just be one-time discussions a year. These must be ongoing discussions so that we can draft legislation with their voices, but also ensure that our legislation that we enact is actually working.
Thank you, Bob. The top two issues that I'm hearing at the door are rising healthcare costs, as well as making college more affordable and investing in our education. First, the healthcare costs, has already been mentioned, that MNsure rates are coming in at 60% higher than they were the year before, which also is on top of an increase from last year. And this is really hitting families' pocketbooks hard. It's important that we reevaluate that program and make sure that we replace it with something that is actually going to work for people. We've already spent over $400 million trying to get this website to work, and there's nothing that people can't stand more than government waste, because when we waste dollars there, it doesn't go to the people that really truly need it. That's why I also voted to stop the tax increases on doctors and other insurance premiums so that people can keep more money in their pocket. And we need to find a system where people are involved in the decision-making process. As far as college affordability, we had, as Drew mentioned, we already passed some legislation that would help college loans and help people there. And we also invested $525 million into our educational system. So focusing on autonomy and flexibility at the local level, I think will also continue to help our schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. I would say passing a transportation bill is one of the highest priorities, but I know we're going to talk about that in a moment. So for me, I'm hearing at the doors every day the concern about investing in education in our districts. Both fully funding pre-K and also helping to alleviate the college debt crisis that our families are facing. By passing all-day kindergarten, we really gave students across Minnesota a chance to achieve a little bit more, be a little bit more competitive. And by continuing to expand that to universal pre-K, we'll be giving the students the tools they need to be educated and successful. We can also strengthen the next generation by offering qualified Minnesota students 2 years free at a community college in Minnesota. My family, we've seen my daughter as she's gone through early childhood education and preschool and now into kindergarten, the benefits that you get from early childhood. There are families across Minnesota who are working 2 and 3 jobs, and by expanding universal pre-K, we're able to give those families a little bit of help on childcare costs, as well as preparing our students well for the next generation. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I have a lot of priorities, but the same ones that brought me to run for office, healthcare, transportation, and education, are still at the top of my list. And if I would pick one of those to focus on, it would be the transportation bill that we did not get passed over the last 2 years. The Senate passed their bill, the House passed their bill, and there has been a conference committee that's been going on for approximately a year, and they didn't manage to get to a final decision because it got pushed to the last minutes of the session. So we have to renew that. That's going to be really important, but then there's the other one too that is going to be fairly quick, I would believe. That's to fix the tax bill that was also pushed until the last minute, but had errors in it, errors that would make that bill an actual, a legitimate bill. Either way it was produced, either with an or with an and. So there were lawsuits that were threatened if it was signed by the governor. So we have to go through that and repass that. But transportation, and like we've been saying that we're going to be talking about that. I really appreciate that the Burnsville Chamber did come out in favor of a sustained and increased investment in transportation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Once again, I applaud all of you. You're doing a wonderful job with managing the time and yet still getting your very important points out for our viewers and for our audience. So, thank you. Okay, for the next question, Dan, we're going to start with you on this.
Okay.
Several of you have talked about this issue of transportation. What do you think are the highest priorities as it relates to transportation? How do we do the funding, and how do we move this thing forward? And
Yeah.
Dan, please start us out.
We can't move it forward because of partisan politics. Well, let me start out with that. But safe and efficient transportation is the highest priority. That's what we should have. It's interesting how we can't get transportation, but we can spend $90 million on a Senate building that we don't need. Or we can raise our own salaries, but we can't get a transportation bill done. That's pretty tough. We have too many potholes. We have concerns with bridges. Let's not expand our transportation until we can maintain what we have. How to fund it? The GOP has had on the table for the last couple of years the same program. $7 billion investment over the next 10 years. I don't believe that we need to raise gas taxes, but I do believe we could funnel auto-related sales taxes to our roads and bridges. So that's how we would do it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Unfortunately, the legislature failed us when they weren't able to come together to pass a transportation bill. That means that roads, bridges, and streets will face less upgrades over the next several months as we wait for the Republican House to get their act together. I want to see that that bill passes immediately. I think our top priority needs to be repairing bridges which are high daily use and are deemed unsafe by our inspectors. We need to look at long-term studies of how people commute and how to decrease commute now before it gets way out of hand. I also want to see more opportunities for rapid transit corridors, carpool options, fast lanes, bypass lanes, and other options that reduce the number of workers and families stuck on the road trying to get to their work or somewhere else. Lastly, and most importantly, I want to hear from you, the businesses, workers, and families, to figure out things that we can do to improve the safety, reliability, and opportunities of Minnesota roads. My opponent supported to send almost $1 billion in federal transportation funding to other metropolitan areas by voting against the Southwest Light Rail, which was supported by local businesses, the chamber, and local leaders. The Southwest Corridor would provide top public transportation dollars and solutions within miles of our Senate district. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan.
Again, we'll go back to we need stable funding for transportation. And this needs to be ongoing because the projects normally take years and years to accomplish from start to finish. And personally, I do say that it's easy enough to improve or to increase the gas tax. The Trucking Association approves of that rather than going into the new taxes. The other thing is, Senator Hull mentioned, was putting taxes on the auto-related products. Those are some of the suggestions, but I will tell you, I am so committed to getting a transportation bill passed, I will vote for literally almost anything that will provide the funding that we need. MnDOT is about 20 years behind in its projects. And I've been on the Transportation Committee for as long as I've been in the legislature. And we've got people from all over the state that understand the needs, that are willing to go forward. And yet we have a legislature that is willing. We didn't get the bill passed because the big deal is over rail. Folks, we can't keep building roads, and we're not taking care of the roads anyways. And as our population increases, and as people come from other areas where they are used to transit, we need to be doing more on public transit. Or we're also going to lose the young people that are going to the cities that have good public transit. So hopefully, as I said, that to me is so very important. And I remember, I do have coffees, and I remember somebody at one of my coffees said, the chamber is behind you this year. Why can't you pass the transportation bill?
Thank you. Brad?
So if the only thing that's holding up the transportation bills is rail, then maybe we should drop rail, because it's not effective. It's not cost effective, makes 0 sense. The bonding bill was passed by the House, ambushed by the DFL Senate. That's why we do not have a bonding bill this year. Okay? No matter what anybody tells you about, it was sent back to the House, it's hogwash. The Republicans passed a bill in the House, sent it to the DFL Senate last minute. They put an amendment on there and ambushed it. That's why we do not have a bonding bill. And that was one of the best bonding bills we've had in generations when it comes to transportation projects. We could have had that. So maybe if the DFL Senate gets their act together, we could have had some of that transportation funding. Perhaps next session we won't have to worry about a DFL-led Senate. So myself, along with Drew and Roz, can work with Senator Hall and Victor and pass real transportation funding. As for spending, we have the CTIB, which I'm glad Dakota County got out of. That was just money from our county going, majority of it went to projects that were way outside of our county. If we are going to have a sales tax dedicated to transportation, then that money should stay here. Thank you.
Thank you. Drew?
You know, there's been a lot of talk here about Southwest Light Rail and light rail lines. Jared mentioned wanting to bring light rail to Burnsville and Savage. And if you look at the Southwest Light Rail, which has been kind of the crux of the issue on Teton Prairie, their own estimates, the Metropolitan Council's own estimates, or Metro Transit's own estimates, think that it would save drivers that commute from Eden Prairie into the city about 8 seconds, not per trip or per day, but over the course of a year. It would save them 8 seconds of time on the road for a massively wasteful amount of money that could be much better spent on expanding our roads and bridges. We need to put lanes before trains. I supported a plan that would have invested $7 billion. Experts essentially in Minnesota universally agree $7 billion over 10 years is what it's going to take to update and fix and expand our roads and bridges. And I supported a plan to invest $7 billion over the next 10 years without raising taxes. It would have dedicated existed sales tax revenue from auto parts, auto-related sales, and spent that money on roads and bridges. When I go out and knock on doors, that's what I hear from people. That's what they want is their tax dollars spent on roads and bridges, not wasteful trains.
Thank you. Jared?
I have two highest priorities in transportation. One of them is expanding light rail. The 35W corridor is one of the heaviest traveled bus corridors in the Twin Cities Metro. My opponent says that we should expand lanes. Well, the population is going to be increasing between 500,000 and 1 million people over the next 20 years. So if you think your congestion times are bad now, just wait 20 years because cars will just fill those lanes again. We also need to rebuild structurally deficient roads and bridges. And to do this, both of these, we must fund them. That's just a given. We could utilize many aspects, including a 10-cent gas tax, which many constituents in Dakota County, through the Minnesota Inter-County Association, have come out in approval of. But we also need to utilize federal funding when given the opportunity. The last legislative session, House Republicans threw away $1 billion that could have been used towards our district and the South Metro, but they threw it away. If I was elected, I'd plan on working with leaders on both sides of the aisle so that we can build a world-class transportation system such as that like Chicago or Washington, D.C. or New York, where people have the mobility and ability to get around to educational opportunities and employment.
Thank you.
86% of the people drive cars, and therefore, in my mind, transportation needs to be focused on our roads and bridges. And as already been mentioned, there was a plan in place to invest in those critical infrastructure projects without raising taxes. The other problem with raising the gas tax is it's an unsustainable place. As cars get more fuel efficient, as there's alternative fuel cars out on the roadways, we need to look at something that's sustainable. And to me, having the sales taxes coming from vehicle-related sales and dedicate those towards our roads and bridges is much more sustainable and will be directly related to the need. I do think that we need to expand our roads to relieve the congestion in our area. The Southwest Light Rail is a $2 billion project for 14 miles, and it'll take you 3 times as long to move people. That's why I also supported the bus rapid transit on the Orange Line, because buses are much more cost efficient, more effective, and they're flexible. So as people's needs change, you can also change with them. And we do need a multimodal system, but I think we have to address that trains are very, very costly.
Thank you.
A few weeks ago, I was on the doors and I talked to a family of 5 here in Burnsville that they're a one-car family because that's what they can afford. And the mom has the car during the day. She gets the kids back and forth where they need to go here in Burnsville. And so the dad takes the bus to Minneapolis, and then he takes another bus to Edina, where he works. He spends more than 2 hours each day commuting each way. We need to be in conversation with the constituents in our communities so that we know what the actual transportation crisis that they're facing are. For too long, this conversation has been centered in St. Paul, and it's been a partisan conversation. It should be focusing around the problems that our constituents are facing right now and the transportation problems or issues that we could be facing in the future. Our roads and bridges are crumbling, and we need a sustainable solution. We cannot keep pushing this forward every 2 years with stopgap plans. We have to make a sustainable plan that can fully fund the whole state immediately.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Transportation is really complicated. One of the things you have to remember is that we have revenue streams that take care of different things. For instance, license plates and gas tax are solely used for roads and bridges according to the Constitution. Not a penny can go to anything else. And transit is something that we have funded through other means. For instance, the half-cent sales tax that you pay into the CTIB program that invests around the cities here, the metro area. An us versus them mentality may help win elections, but it really doesn't help our communities. What we need to do is we need to look at the facts. As an engineer, I always look at the facts. I always research. And one of the things that we're talking about here is a little bit of revisionist history. The bonding bill was not killed by the Senate. There were 19 Republicans that voted with the Democrats to get that passed and sent over to the House. The House chose not to take it up and to adjourn early. They adjourned early. They could have taken it up. This whole discussion could have been avoided. We have gotten many letters from CEOs from business supporting it. And in fact, I'm going to try to get something through here that I have a note from the Chamber of Commerce president from Minneapolis, John Stanek. The Minnesota Chamber specifically supports all rail investment, specifically supports Southwest LRT. The word transit was intended to be read by me as a proxy for rail investment and rapid transit.
Thank you.
Transportation indeed is an important issue. It's important for most Minnesotans, especially here in the metro area. And Senator Howell was right when he said that before we put partisan politics aside, we won't be able to agree on anything. So I think we need to first agree on basic things. What are basic things? 87%, over 87% of people commute, they use our roads and bridges, they drive. So number one priority is safety. We know where that could lead, right? The 35W bridge collapse. Second, I would put congestion relief. So we need to give people what they want and what they use, and those are roads and bridges. And the reality is there's a projected shortfall in funding for roads and bridges because less money coming in from the federal government, and vehicles are becoming more fuel efficient. So we need to deal with funding for sure. A couple of basic things we can do off the bat is prioritize roads and bridges over a luxury Senate building in the bonding bill. As simple as that. Put roads and bridges before that. I would also like to look into a public-private partnerships for projects that are more efficient and could get the job done faster for roads and bridges. So those would be my priorities. I'm not against mass transit. Buses are a great way to relieve congestion. Orange Line, as Roz mentioned, I would fully support something like that as well.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to the next question. And I believe, Phil, you'll be starting out with this. The question is, would you support eliminating the automatic inflator on business property tax and not shifting additional property tax burden to business? Why or why not?
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. This seems like a no-brainer to me. This tax is on autopilot. Each year, we're taxing small businesses more and more. I believe we should cap it at the current level, and it's very likely the funds from the general surplus could cover any of this lost revenue. I would also like to carry legislation that would exempt the first $100,000 of commercial industrial property across the state so that all businesses, but especially small Minnesota businesses, are able to grow their businesses.
Again, I know we keep hearing again that the business taxes are too high, and I certainly am willing to look at this and to make certain what Mr. Sterner said was really very relevant. But you have to remember that if you change one tax, that means the money coming in is going to be decreased. If you, in this case, if you're lessening that, so it means you have to come up with another resource. So it's not easy to just say, well, raise one tax and forget about everything else. There needs to be a balance, and it needs to be a broader discussion.
Any auto inflator in the law, whether it's a tax increase, a minimum wage increase, anything that has an auto inflator should be abolished. It's the responsibility of the legislature to take those hard votes. Whether you want the taxes to be increased, then you need to stand on your laurels and vote for it, or vote against it. But putting in an auto inflator is punting. It means it's just going to keep going up, and then it provides you coverage for saying, well, I didn't vote on it. That happened, 4 years ago. Auto inflators should be abolished. Pass-through taxes, we should not be hurting our small businesses, because all that does is those taxes get passed on to the consumer. So, like I like to call it, trickle-down taxation. You might think that you're taxing somebody. You think that these businesses just have this big pile of money sitting there just waiting to be shoveled into the government coffers. It's not how it works. Anybody that knows anything about small business realize that you have your bottom line. And if you get taxed more, you're going to have to either raise prices, cut back on employees' hours, maybe not give high enough wage increases that you wanted. There's always unintended consequences to taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Drew?
You know, the short answer is yes. You know, businesses create good-paying jobs for Minnesotans, and we need to let them thrive, allow them to create good-paying jobs, so Minnesotans can live, work, and play comfortably. You know, briefly, I'd like to return though to transportation. The previous question. You know, the Metro Transit and the Met Council's their own estimates is it saves light rail, Southwest Light Rail, saves 8 seconds over the course of a year, yet. Jared said that was his plan to reduce congestion is light rail. The biggest supporters of light rail say it's not going to reduce congestion. The only thing that's going to reduce congestion is lanes. That's where our priorities need to be for transportation funding. It just doesn't make any sense to have your plan to reduce congestion be Southwest Light Rail when its biggest backers say it's not going to reduce congestion. The other thing is Southwest Light Rail has been blocking things that will reduce congestion. In the bonding bill that was held up by the DFL Senate, contained money, $20 million, I believe, for the Cliff Road interchange to reduce congestion here on 35W in Burnsville, and it included money to fully fund the Orange Line for bus rapid transit, which I know tons of people that love and ride to Minneapolis. Real things that reduce congestion, not made-up things.
Thank you. Darren?
I absolutely am in support of eliminating the auto inflator of small business taxes. Small businesses are the lifeline of small communities like Savage and Burnsville, and when you tax them, it reduces the ability of them to expand by purchasing new machinery, partaking in research and development. But also one of the most important aspects when reducing taxes on small businesses is the ability of them to provide livable wages to their employees. So that's the short answer. I agree with that.
Thank you. Roz?
No tax should be on an automatic inflator. I think it's wrong, and it was something that we had in our tax bill. We could not convince the Democrats to agree to eliminating the auto inflator, but we were able to agree to reducing the property tax, and so I think that was a step in the right direction. I know from working with businesses every day as a commercial realtor that these property taxes are really becoming burdensome. For example, businesses represent 13% of the valuation. However, they pay 31% of the total tax. That simply isn't fair, and then to add an automatic inflator on top of that is wrong. But it's one of the reasons that Minnesota ranks 47th in overall business climate when it comes to taxes. And I think that our businesses deserve a little bit of a break and help those that can benefit the most from those mom and pop shops on Main Street. They could really use some relief, and I think that we need to keep people like that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Lindsay?
First and foremost, as a small business owner, I would never make a financial decision without seeing the projections for the future. So I would want to see the updated budget surplus before I would make specific promises on any particular tax cut. I would also want to make sure that any changes that we make to current tax law are not going to be then pushed back to property owners, homeowners in our district. We have a lot of working families and seniors on fixed income who can't afford to bear the burden for large businesses in Minnesota. However, on the particular issue of the auto inflator, I think we should always avoid taxes that are functionally on autopilot. Ending the inflator could, depending on the budget forecast, really come out of the surplus and not be too painful. Based on the legislation that was out in 2015, that looked very doable. I also support the $100,000 cap or the benefit to exempting the first $100,000 of corporate property tax as a way to lower the burden for small businesses.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I absolutely agree with eliminating the automatic inflator, but we have to look at some history too. In 2000 is when the commercial industrial tax was passed. It was intended to be for education and exclusively education. But when we had the If you remember, in 2002 to 2005, we had a very difficult time passing a budget that was balanced. So that money was taken away from education and put into the other funds in the general fund. And so now it has gone up, and of course it is, interestingly, it's a tax on valuation as opposed to a levy. And so that tax has actually increased beyond what even the chamber said it was going to it was going to inflate. And in fact, the chamber at the time was absolutely in favor of this and thought it was going to reduce their tax burden. It has not. And there is a bill that was prepared for this last session by Senator Skoye and Senator Rest. And unfortunately, just like Representative Mason says that when you take something away, you have to backfill the hole, that bill was going to cost $95 million. And so there was just no space to do everything that we needed to do. And I have to remember, this is a permanent tax cut. This is not something where you can use the surplus. This is a permanent tax cut. So yes, I do feel that that's doable, and I think it probably can be done in 2017.
Thank you. Victor?
Yes, I would support getting rid of the automatic inflator. I think, as Roz said, the business property taxes are disproportionate. We do need to address it. And I do support steadily balancing it out, making it more proportional, not cutting it at the same time, all at once. I understand the reality. But let me talk about taxes here and our business climate. This has everything to do with taxes again and jobs. Joseph Kennedy, big-time economist, did a study recently, and it doesn't matter what politicians tell you that our economy is one of the best or is doing great. That's not true. We are mediocre at best. And as I said before, we need to stay competitive not only nationally but globally now. And some of the things, for example, we have less high-tech jobs in this state than 15 years ago. People that are working age, 34 to 65, are leaving the state. Those are the people that are leaving for lower tax states. And that's bad. That's bad for our economy. So let me give you some real principles that will lead to solutions. I support lowering the rates and broadening the base. I'd rather have more people paying less taxes than less people paying more, right? And that would bring back the jobs, quality jobs, give college grads good paying jobs, quality jobs, and not be underemployed. So those are some real solutions that I would offer up.
Thank you. Dan?
Good job. It looks like we're not going to have an automatic inflator next year. That'd be awful nice. Yes, the automatic inflator has put a burden on businesses, and it's really just an unfair tax that's put on. Somehow, our businesses have gotten a bad rap over the years. It's almost like we can tax them because they're not real people. And I have a problem with that because businesses are there to support jobs. Jobs are what we need and to take care of our families. So legislators, I believe, put this in because it gives them a free pass. As Brad said, they don't have to be accountable for what they're doing every year. We need to make the case before our constituents at the Capitol, and we need to be accountable for our votes. And remember, businesses create jobs. Jobs are the backbone of our economy. And with a strong economy, families have less pressures and they have more opportunities. And if America stands for one thing, it would be the freedom of opportunities that we have.
Thank you. Well, thank you once again. You've done a wonderful job of making your points and staying within the time. I really appreciate that. For our audience and for our viewers, we're going to go into the next phase of questions, and we've actually given our candidates 4 questions, and they get to choose. The first one relates around health care, the second one around legislator preempting local authority and wage and benefits, the third one is on job openings, and the last one is on party politics. And so they get to pick which question they would like to answer, and Sandra, you get to start out.
Thank very much. I'm going to go with the number 7, and it's the fact that many businesses have job openings, but we're battling that we don't have the people qualified to fill many of these positions. And again, I believe we should be working as a community, and I think all the school districts in my particular House district, they are doing partnerships with businesses. And so I'm really excited about that the kids are getting the opportunity to look more at jobs. And most importantly, it's important that the kids, both in our school and our higher eds, that we are providing the courses that are necessary to fulfill the jobs that we have. And it's critical. I know one friend of mine has a business, and he was almost thinking of moving near a Canadian college just so that he could get the people in his particular business, because most of the people graduating from U, they go to the top businesses, and there aren't many people left. So again, I think we need to really work hard at making sure we know what the businesses are at this point in time, and technology is changing things so quickly. So I think we need to be at the, this needs to be ongoing, where our businesses, our schools really work together.
Thank you. Brad? Thank you. I also would like to touch on the filling jobs that are going to be available coming up in the future, jobs that are available now. I think we need to concentrate on promoting some of the trades that are open, being a pipe fitter, a mechanic, a plumber, electrician. Those are the trades that you don't have to have an extensive education. You don't have to go $100,000 in debt to become one of those trades, or to become proficient in one of those trades. Those are the jobs, those are the high-paying jobs that offer very good retirement for those who have a career in that. I like to use the example of my 2 brothers. I have 2 brothers that are mechanics, and as long as they know how to fix a car, they're not going to be unemployed. There's other trades like truck driving. The guy who owns the truck driving school down in South St. Paul, I saw a news story on him several months back saying that he can't get enough candidates to come in to learn how to drive a truck, and there's businesses offering people bonuses. So as soon as they graduate and they get their proper endorsement on their driver's license, they're offering a bonus for them to come aboard. Those are the jobs that are high paying, that people can have a very good career, and I love the term livable wage, which is very subjective, but I don't think you're going to have any problems living off the wages if you work in one of those trades. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd also like to talk about education. I think education is so critically important to making sure our businesses have good employees, that Minnesotans are able to get good paying jobs and be able to support a family. Like I said before, that's why I supported and pushed for, and we secured the largest increase in education funding in over a decade in Minnesota. I think that's critically important. Minnesota also has a lot of people don't know this, the largest achievement gap between white students and students of color in the country. And we hear about this in St. Paul and in kind of the bubble a lot, about the achievement gap. And there's a lot of people that like to talk about the achievement gap and like to say they know what to do with the achievement gap. And we have a lot of talkers in St. Paul, but we don't have nearly enough doers in St. Paul. And when I'm not at the Capitol, I substitute teach public school in Minneapolis and in North Minneapolis oftentimes, to get a firsthand look at the achievement gap and what we can do to help all Minnesotans make sure they get a great education, regardless of their zip code, regardless of their family circumstances. And that's also why, Jared talked earlier about universal preschool. I want to make sure every family that wants to send their kid to preschool has a chance to do that. And that's why I supported a plan that would give scholarships to families in need to send their kids to school, to send their kids to preschool of their choice, because parents know what's best for their children.
Thank you. Jerry?
I also picked how the state can spur or create more employment opportunities through education. The state can provide resources to create a bridge between businesses and schools. This is currently already done. I was a previous employee of McDonald's, where my management curriculum that I had taken part of qualifies as college credits towards any university or colleges that I pursue. Starbucks also provides resources for education, where they help pay for their employees' educations with whatever grants and scholarships that employees, their education isn't covered. The partnership can also match education with businesses by allowing businesses to have a voice in the type of curriculum that is developed in the education system. We also need more guidance counselors in schools to allow for students to understand the pathways, whether it's to a technical college, trades, or to large public universities. And that covers everything from engineers, like Senator Carlson is at a four-year university, to trades like pipe fitters. So education is really the big thing of creating qualified applicants for businesses.
Thank you. Roz?
Thank you. We talked a little bit about healthcare and how we need to address the rising healthcare costs. And one item that we have not talked about that is on the list here is about should the legislature preempt local authority on wage and benefits. And I do think it's important that we have some autonomy for businesses across the state, that things shouldn't be city by city, which is currently been passing. So I just want to make sure that issue got brought out there. But I also wanted to talk a little bit more about aligning the workforce needs along with so that supply and demand are connected. There's some great things happening at our school. Burnsville High School has some expansion that are career oriented to introduce students to careers where there is high demand, whether it's in healthcare or in other areas. Lakeville Area Schools has a career pathway program, and also 196 has been doing lots of things with robotics and other things. So I think that our schools are beginning to be on the right track, and we're having conversations with our business partners, and we're really excited about the work that we're doing there. However, we can continue to support that with issues, to help that with scholarships and apprenticeship programs and things of that nature so that we can align that workforce.
Thank you. Lindsay?
I'm also talking about connecting our workforce with our businesses. As a small business owner, one of the toughest challenges we have is maintaining a talented and educated workforce. Down here in the South Metro, we are in competition with Amazon, with Target, with Best Buy, with some great Minnesota companies, and small businesses are competing for those same workers. Minnesota is facing a real dilemma. Students are graduating with record debt, and they're taking that debt on at such a young age that's really tying them to needing to get a job as quickly as possible, and we need to make sure that we have folks educated for the jobs that are available. In this county, there's some great things that are going on. Dakota and Scott County both have excellent resources for connecting businesses and community colleges, which really can help fill those gaps. Labor is also doing a great job with this by having amazing apprenticeship programs, which a lot of you guys already talked about. I think that continuing to invest in working jobs that are high paying, that Minnesotans are in need of, is a great way to continue to make sure we have one of the best educated workforces in the country. And we really need to make sure that we're building communities that our people want to stay in. If we have safe, healthy communities where folks want to stay with high paying jobs, we'll keep the most talented workers here in Minnesota.
Thank you. Jim?
Well, thank you. This was kind of a tough question to answer because there's so many things that we do need to look at. But what I decided to do is to look at the one that affects us most. Almost everyone has some healthcare story that they could relate to us. But when we talk about the increasing costs of healthcare, you really need to drill into that and figure out why that's happening. You all see the nightly news, I think, and you know who's sponsoring that. That's the pharmaceutical companies. Who is paying for that? Well, that's you in your premiums. This is not some other mechanism of financing those kinds of commercials at prime time. Who's actually paying for an EpiPen that went from about $100 a pair to almost $600 a pair, and that you can get them from Canada for $50. And this has nothing to do with the the initial invention because that was done by the military. That was an auto-injector system that was developed by the military. So these are the things that are going into your premiums. You have to pay for that. And when we talk about tossing out MNsure, we talk about, are we talking about getting rid of the exemption for pre-existing conditions? No, you want that. Or do we want to be able to have your health care canceled when you get sick? No, we don't want that. Do we want our young kids up to age 26 to be covered? Yes, we want that. So when we think about tossing out MNsure, it's tossing out all of those benefits.
Thank you. Victor?
Yep, and there are definitely some positive things that came out of covering people. Access, ACA helped with access, but MNsure is still such a disaster and definitely needs reform. Hurting our families. I'd like to touch on education and the job openings and the trained workforce. Education, we heard the achievement gap, disaster, sad and wrong. And absolutely, what we've been doing is not working. It's not working. So what do? We go on to, we try something else, right? And that's why I'm running. Because I think we need to start trying something else. One thing I would offer up is opportunity scholarships, is giving opportunities to those most in need, those children that are less fortunate. It worked in other states. I think it could work great. So I would start there. As far as addressing lack of properly educated workforce for job openings, I don't see a reason why the state should discriminate between traditional coursework and training on a job site. So I would support tax credit for businesses for preparing workers in apprenticeship programs. And it's not another cut. It's just putting the resources where people want them, where they are needed, and where we can, this is being creative. This is being innovative. This is why I'm running, and this is what I stand for. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
I chose one of the biggest challenges in our political system today is party politics. And can we identify areas of reaching across the aisle, and can we get something done? Let me say first off, the public hears a lot of what the news media puts out. Most of the time we do get along at the Capitol, believe it or not. But there are some things that we really do need to change. All too often, the transparency is not what it should be. Every year, we seem to have the same story at the end. We wait till the last minute. There's major bills that are negotiated behind closed doors. Bills are thrown into that, omnibus bills, and some of those have never been heard by the public. Take, for instance, Southwest Light Rail. If you haven't seen the video of the last 15 to a half hour of session last year, you need to see that, because it shows how that was thrown in as a wrench and just stopped everything. The House and the Senate had an agreement. The House closed up at the end because they knew the agreement we had. The Senate decided to do some shenanigans and throw the light rail in, and it messed the whole thing up, and that's why we don't have the roads and bridges taken care of like we should. So we need open and honest debate. We need transparency. We need to be able to reach across the aisle more so. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill?
Right. Thank you. And I also took the question about the biggest challenges of our political system as party politics. So I think both Democrats and Republicans have it wrong on the minimum wage, for example. In states across the country, due in large part to Republicans blocking legislation, we go years and sometimes decades without an increase in the minimum wage. However, when the Democrats get a chance, they increase their rate so quickly that has a negative impact on businesses. I would work with Republicans and Democrats to create a stable way for workers across Minnesota to have an economy that works best for all of us. The state should only increase the minimum wage in conjunction with inflation and cost of living. I believe that we should be able to raise the wage over time, incrementally, to give states across the, families across the state opportunity to put more money in their pocketbook without harming small businesses in Minnesota. Finally, this should be done on a state level so we have an equal playing field across the state. A lot of localities are taking this measure on directly, and this could cause unneeded and bad competition among cities and opportunities for businesses. I also have a history of working with and will continue to work with businesses and educational institutions to make sure that our educational schools train a labor force that Minnesota businesses want to hire. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're into our last part of our conversation today, and this will be the wrap-up statements. I want to remind everyone that this is at 1 minute for your closing statement and telling us a little bit why you're the best candidate. And Brad, you get to start out.
Thank you. I'm going to go to St. Paul and represent the citizens of this district, in Burnsville and Egan. I'm going to represent the interests of this district. Senator Hall touched on a little bit about businesses create jobs. I hate when politicians claim to create jobs or promise to create jobs. Politicians don't create jobs, businesses do. It's our job as politicians or government officials to make it as easy as possible for those businesses to create jobs. And that's what helps the economy. That's what's going to grow the economy is more jobs, more good-paying jobs. If we had enough good-paying jobs, we wouldn't even be discussing the minimum wage hikes at this point. More jobs, better economy, and by nature, that gives us a bigger tax base to work with so we can build more roads and bridges. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming out this morning. My name's Drew Christensen. I'm asking for your vote this November. I've lived here my entire life. I've lived in Burnsville and in Savage. I've lived in Minnesota my entire life. I'm proud to say I'm the only Vikings fan in this race.
Hey.
You know, I know this community. I've lived here my entire life. I've been knocking on doors for, I guess, 3 years now, talking to people, and now I'm up for my performance review with my 40,000 bosses, and I'm looking forward to continuing that over the next few weeks until Election Day, and I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to those conversations.
Thank you. Jared.
I'm the most qualified person to represent Burnsville and Savage because I actually bring personal responsibility and hard work, which I've had to learn at an early age. I understand how economic downturns and predatory lending can cause my parents to lose jobs and also their home. But I also understand how state grants, like the ones that they receive to become truck drivers, can help them get off their feet again. I'm a University of Minnesota student, so I understand how $25,000 in student loan debt, which I currently have, is going to take me 15, 20 years to pay off. It's absolutely ridiculous. I bring the common sense approach and the ability to listen to diverse groups of people because I have traveled the world when I worked for the airlines, and I currently am an assistant manager. So I have learned the business acumen and worked with other employees below me to foster their learning and development. I'm the best person because I just do listen, and that's what the state legislature needs to do. They need to listen to the concerns of their constituents, and I hope that you will elect me this November. Thank you.
Thank you, Roz.
Balance is important. We remember what happened when there was one-party control. We got a $90 million office building, we got a $2 billion tax increase, and we also have a failed MNsure exchange. Governor Dayton needs to be kept in check, and I want to remind people that I am used to working across the aisle. Almost all my bills had co-authors from the other side of the aisle, so it is important that we work together to get things done. If reelected, I'd like to work on tackling tough issues like lowering health care costs, eliminating wasteful spending, and putting families first. We're creating an environment of good-paying and high-paying jobs, and funding our transportation needs, and promoting a world-class education system that produces the best workforce in quality jobs. I offer the experience of being a responsible and proven to the people of Burnsville and Lakeville. We need an efficient and effective government, the one that promotes more innovation and that prioritizes families and hardworking Minnesotans. And I ask for your vote on November 8th for Roz Peterson. You can find out more at rozpeterson.com.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you.
I'm honored to be here today and to be running for this office. Our campaign is focused on three main principles: prioritizing students, a vibrant economy, and healthy communities. As a business owner, I want to continue to be a part of the vibrant financial and economic economy that we have right here in Burnsville and Lakeville. And I want to make sure that we're protecting opportunities for the middle class to succeed. We can do that through equal pay for equal work, through providing paid parental leave and paid sick days, and new job training and education programs. I want to make sure our communities are safe and healthy by ensuring we have clean air and water, and that we are closing the gun show loophole and passing background checks to keep guns out of the hands of dangerous criminals. We need to invest in our students by providing all-day kindergarten and making sure that college debt is not drowning our youngest workers. We have a lot to do to strengthen our state, but I believe by working together, we can get it done.
Thank you. Jim?
Yeah, thank you very much. I really hope that you give this forum a lot of thought, a lot of examination, and look at each of us and say, well, okay, what's the background here that will serve you best in the legislature? I can tell you, and I think any of the other incumbents can tell you, that it's a lot of work, a lot of work. And you can make it easy and just ignore what you need to do, or you can do a lot of examination, and that's what I do. I examine each and every issue. I look into it, look into the background. I do a lot of study, and then I vote in the way that my Constitution or my constituents or my wife tells me how to vote. So those are the kinds of things that you do have to balance when you go into the legislature. And I know all three school district superintendents. We have a great set of school districts in this particular district. And I think what we need to do is look at what you want and communicate to your legislature and let us know. And I hope I can count on your vote on November 8th.
Thank you.
Thank you for the endorsement, by the way, Mr. Carlson. But we are clearly on the wrong path here on taxes, health care. As a matter of fact, my opponent last night stated that our constituents in our district want tax raises. Exact words. That is not in touch with our voters. I haven't met one door knocking. I am in sync with the people of our district. I will represent every person of our district. I'm not a career politician. I have never been in office. And I'm an immigrant who came here and realized the American dream. I have something to compare to. I know what works. I know what doesn't work. And I am driven, hardworking, and highly motivated to get some things done in the Senate. And I'm asking for your endorsement this November, for your vote, and we will together govern this state in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
My life experiences, my people-related history, and my family are my greatest assets. For 6 years, I've represented you, and it's been a pleasure in St. Paul. My work experiences have been to strengthen and rebuild family relationships. And my 42-year marriage to my wife, Valerie, to whom I still adore, and raising our 8 children. Those are my assets. I've walked all the corners of my district. I may not remember everybody's name, but I remember faces and stories, the challenges they're having with health care and high college tuition, the struggles of finding jobs and paying their bills, the appreciation that my constituents have of their neighbors and of our police and fire departments, their beliefs in God and country, and believing in opportunity that can be found in America. I hope you'll consider me in November. VoteDanHall.com.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you. I have always been a part of this community my whole life. I've been a small business leader, a community leader, and want to represent the voices of the community in St. Paul. As an insurance agent, I've seen firsthand the devastation that happens to family in tragic times. I help people plan for these times and make sure that their families are taken care of. That, I believe, are great qualities of a legislature. not a partisan politician. I firmly believe that Minnesota has a bright future. It is a future where all families' pocketbooks get a little bigger, small businesses are able to add staff, students can afford college, and our younger students get a world-class education. That is what my campaign is fighting for. We won't always agree on every issue, but I've always been known as someone who will listen to both sides of an argument. This is vital in our modern-day political environment. More information can be found at www.philsterner.com, and I'm asking for your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sandra?
Thank you. I do want to make one comment. From my perspective, I've always thought the balance among government was supposed to be between the executive branch, the legislature, and the judiciary. It did not have anything to do with political parties. And maybe that might be part of the problems. People don't understand how our government was meant to work. I also, given our audience, I do want to mention that this past session, I did have legislation that was included in the next Main Street Act, and this act was to really help small businesses thrive. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss the important issues to the future of our district and our state. And I have always tried to represent our district with the dignity that I think this position deserves. I have an open door policy and treat all visitors in a respectful manner and try to learn from all. And I'm mentioning this because this has not always been the case. This is my home. I want the best for our community, and I work hard to that end. My record shows that I am willing to vote to get things done. I do work across the aisle. I do know how to compromise. The people in our district expect us to get our work done and do it in a timely fashion, and that's what I have tried to do. And I think you have to look at the way things have been done this past 2 years, the incredibly poor management in the House.
Thank you. I'd like to address the group a couple things. First off, thank you very much for your very thoughtful comments. Thank you for the respect that you showed each other as you tried to work through and get us educated. And thank you so much for honoring our time commitments. I really appreciate that. I'd like to thank our sponsor for this morning's event, Xcel Energy, our host, the City of Burnsville, BCTV for recording and streaming the event, our candidates again for their participation, and also thank you, the audience, and our online viewers. Please continue to learn more about our candidates, and remember, vote on November 8th. Thank you very much.